The Ice Hawk tip-up is the world's most advanced tip-up. But is it even a tip-up at all? After all, there's no little flag that tips up. So I'd say it's more accurately described as being tip-up adjacent. Like a tip-up, it's essentially a fish trap meant to be deployed on the ice. So ultimately it serves the same purpose, but I digress. It's called a tip-up on the website, so that is how we're going to refer to it, a tip-up. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate the many features of this high-tech tip-up, and I'll also show you how to set it up for maximum performance. We'll start here with the first feature that really sets these apart from the other tip-ups on the market, and that is the LED light tower. When a fish takes the bait, instead of a little flag tipping up, the lights on the LED light tower will flash green. In addition to alerting the angler to a bite, the lights on the LED light tower will also indicate when a fish is actively taking out line, going on a run, and they'll also show you in real time how much line has been taken out from the spool. The lights are connected to a sensor that tracks the revolutions of the spool. So with each spool revolution, the lights will flash blue. And if they remain a constant blue color, that means the fish is taking out line rapidly. It is going on a run. And if those blue lights then disappear, that means that the fish has stopped its run or has dropped the bait. So to recap, a flashing green light will tell you when the fish has taken the bait. A flashing blue light will tell you when the fish is actively taking out line and how quickly it is taking out line. And then there is also a climbing white light on the LED light tower that will tell you how much line in real time has been taken out from the spool. There is an onboard computer that keeps a running count of the spool revolutions, and that climbing white light will appear on the light tower at 5, 20, and 40 revolutions. And using this indicator, you can reasonably determine how much total line has been taken out from the spool. How cool is that? All right, next let's talk about controls. We have a simple 3-button control panel here. We have the power and reset button, the audio alarm toggle button, and the light mode toggle button. To turn the tip-up on, you just hold down the power button for 1 second and you'll hear a beep. The tip-up is now armed and the lights are defaulted to 360 mode, which just means that the lights are activated on both sides of the light tower. Alternatively, you can hold down the power button for 3 seconds and you'll hear 2 beeps. The tip-up is now armed in 180 mode and only the lights on the back of the tower are activated. This can be handy if you want to avoid broadcasting to other anglers across the ice that you're catching fish or just to conserve the batteries. And then after catching a fish and resetting your bait, pressing this same button resets and rearms the tip-up. And once it's reset, holding this button down turns the tip-up off. All right, next on the control panel, we have the audio alarm toggle button. And simply pressing this button will turn the sound on or off. If you're setting up the tip-up in a spot that might be outside your field of view from inside your shelter, or if you're using a quick strike rig and you need to be alerted quickly to the bite, you may want to toggle the sound on. But once again, if you want to avoid alerting other anglers across the ice that you're on a bite, or if you want to avoid disturbing a group of fish that you're set up on, you may want to toggle that sound off. All right, lastly on the control panel, we have the light mode toggle button. Holding this button for 1 second turns on 180-degree light mode. Holding the button for 2 seconds turns on 360-degree light mode, which just means the lights are activated on both sides of the LED light tower. Once light mode has been activated, the tip-up is no longer armed. It actually cannot be armed while it is in light mode. This mode is strictly for illuminating the surrounding area. This mode is extremely useful for the purposes of setting up your shelter or rigging up your tip-up or performing any tasks under low light conditions. And this light mode functionality of the tip-ups essentially eliminates the need to bring an additional light source out there with you to help with setup, which means just one less thing to pack in the sled. All right, so far we've covered the LED light tower and the control panel. Let's talk about another feature that sets these tip-ups apart from the others on the market, and that is the interchangeable spools. First and foremost, these spools have the highest line capacity of any spools of any tip-ups on the market, which allows you to fish deeper and to use heavier lines with higher diameters. The increased line capacity is great, but the best thing about the interchangeable spools is the ability to simply pop one off and put another one on, so you can switch from targeting sturgeon to pike to walleye to panfish in just a matter of seconds without carrying additional tip-ups. And to be honest with you, I think it's a little bit embarrassing that this isn't a standard feature of all tip-ups. Now, down here next to the spool, we have the fully adjustable magnetic line tension clip. All you have to do is simply turn this little screw to adjust the proximity to the magnetic line clip, which controls the amount of force required to release it. At its strongest setting, the magnet is strong enough to support larger live baits like sucker minnows or live bluegills. I have personally dropped down some sucker minnows that were at least 10 inches long with a 1/8 ounce weight and didn't have any problems with false alarms. And at its lightest setting, the magnetic tension is also light enough for smaller panfish baits like little waxworms. All right, moving on up to the opposite end of the tip up, we have a 1/4 inch hanging hole. You can really use this hole however you want to. You could run a paracord through it or a zip tie and attach something to it, but I use it as intended. I use these to hang them up under one of my shelves in my studio for storage. There's not really much else to say about the hanging hole. It's just a nice, convenient little feature. All right, we've covered the features of the Ice Hawk tip-ups. Let's talk about the construction. The body, the legs, and the spools are all made from a fiberglass reinforced polycarbonate. This is the strongest plastic on the market. This material weighs 75% less than steel, but pound for pound, it is stronger than many of the steels out there. It's also impact resistant, corrosion proof, and highly insulative, which enables the tip-up to stand up to the harshest winter conditions, extreme low temperatures, and bumpy rides on the sled. All right, now we've covered the features, we've covered the construction, and before we move on to the setup process, let's talk about the warranty and parts replacement. The Ice Hawk tip-ups come with a 90-day warranty on the electrical components and lighting, and a 1-year warranty on the frame of the tip-up. The warranty covers any type of manufacturing defect you might encounter, and if you do have an issue, just shoot Jason over at Ice Hawk an email. He's a stand-up guy, he'll take care of you. Now let's say hypothetically that you're past your warranty period and you're a heavy guy like me. I'm a little bit obese and a little bit clumsy, and I trip and fall on top of my tip-up and snap off one of the legs. Or maybe you just had a few beers and you drop one of your interchangeable spools or your magnetic line clip down the hole, never to be seen again. If those things do happen to you, well, you're in luck, because Ice Hawk sells replacement legs for your tip-up, replacement interchangeable spools, and replacement magnetic line clips on the website. So there's no need to buy a whole new tip-up, just buy the replacement part. All right, that covers the tip-up. Now we're going to set it up for maximum performance. And to start, we're going to talk about the batteries. I have determined through my research that the best possible batteries for the Ice Hawk tip-up are the Eneloop Pro nickel metal hydride AA batteries. These rechargeable batteries right here will last you a long time. With proper care, they should hold enough charge for a full day out on the ice for up to 10 to 15 years. These are definitely more expensive up front, but they're far cheaper in the long term as opposed to using dozens of pairs of Amazon Basics alkaline batteries. Those things are straight up trash. But the real main reason that these nickel metal hydride batteries are your best option are because they are the best suited for cold temperatures. They will continue to run in temperatures up to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, in continuing with our setup process, let's put some line on our spools, and I've come up with a creative way to spool up the line tightly and evenly, and it involves a tool that you guys have seen featured in a couple of my other videos. First and foremost, what line should you use and how much? Well, in order to capitalize on the spool's larger capacity, I'm going to recommend that you first spool on 100 yards of 20-pound fly line Dacron backing. The backing effectively just increases the inner diameter of the spool that your main line goes around, resulting in more line released per revolution. Fewer revolutions of the spool means less friction, and less friction means a lower possibility that the fish will detect resistance. In other words, the line just comes off smoother. The Dacron fly line backing is ideal for this application for a few reasons. Number one, it's cheap. Number two, it lays flat so that the braided main line doesn't cut into it. And number three, it's resistant to freezing. And regardless of which braided main line you choose, 100 yards will be a sufficient amount of Dacron backing. Now for your braided main line, I recommend Suffix Performance Tip-Up Ice Braid, and a 50-yard spool is going to be sufficient for 100% of your applications. With 50 yards of braided main line on your tip-up, there's almost no chance that that backing is ever going to see the light of day. For panfish, I go with the 15-pound test. For your bass or walleye, I go with the 20-pound test. For pike or lake trout, the 30-pound test. And then for larger fish like sturgeon, muskies, or flathead catfish, go with the 50-pound test. Now, just as you would any time that you've ever spooled up a reel, you want to put your line onto your tip-up spool as evenly and tightly as possible. And to accomplish this, I'm bringing out a tool that I have used in a couple of other videos, the PC Fun SpeedX line spooler and unwinder. I'm not partnered with PC Fun, but I'm about to give you yet another reason to purchase this amazing tool that I use to spool up all of my reels and my tip-up spools. Before you get started spooling up your line, the first thing you want to do is wrap the interior surface of your spool with some 1-inch or 3/4 inch electrical tape. 1 inch fits the interior surface perfectly, but 3/4 inch will work just fine, and that electrical tape prevents the backing from sliding around the smooth surface of the spool. The next thing you want to do is to spool up all 100 yards of your fly line Dacron backing onto an empty baitcaster reel, and it needs to be large enough to hold all of that line, so a 300 size baitcaster or bigger will work. You can also use a conventional reel that has a large line capacity, but a spinning reel will not do the job. If you have a 300 or larger size baitcaster that is already spooled up with some line and you don't want to waste it, that's not a problem. Just use the unwinding feature of the PC Fun SpeedX line spooler and unwinder to take that line off before you spool on that Dacron backing. Once the backing has been spooled onto the baitcaster reel, I attach my empty tip-up spool to the line spooler and tie the line to the surface of the spool using an inverted uni knot, and then insert the unwinding attachment backwards. I'm right-handed, so my unwinding handle is going to be on the left side. Next, you want to cover the end of the unwinding attachment with a rubber screw thread protector, and then clamp a power drill over the end of the attachment opposite of the handle side. At this stage, make sure that the drag is loose enough on the baitcaster reel for the line to be unspooled from it, and also make sure that the tension on the empty Ice Hawk spool is very tight. Then use your power drill to turn the unwinder attachment and fill the spool with the backing from the baitcaster reel. While you're doing this, use your other hand to guide the line back and forth, making sure that it lays onto the spool tightly and evenly, creating a nice flat surface. Once finished, you're going to repeat this same exact process with your braided main line, connecting that braided main line to the backing with a uni to uni knot and spooling it on with the drill in the same manner. Now, I'm well aware that not everyone has access to all of these tools, and that's fine. The most important thing is that you put the line onto the spool tightly and evenly, and if you can come up with another creative way to do that with the tools that you have available to you, that's great. However, I do recommend that PC Fun line spooler and unwinder tool to everyone. The first couple of times that you unwind and save a full spool of line, it pays for itself. Okay, once you have spooled on your 100 yards of 20-pound Dacron backing and your 50 yards of braided tip-up main line, it's time to rig up. And now, before you do anything else, make sure you slide on your magnetic line clip. If you forget to do this step now, you'll have to undo everything later and start over. Next, depending on what type of bait you're going to be dropping down, you may want to add a weight to your rig. And if you're using live bait, that is an absolute must. That weight will keep your bait down in the desired zone. For my rigs, I always use either a 1/16 ounce or 1/8 ounce worm weight. This particular style of weight is my preference because it has a tapered shape, which prevents it from catching on the edge of the ice. After adding your weight to the line, you're going to want to add a rubber buffer bead on there to protect the knot. And I like to use these cheap ones made by a company called Dovewell. You can just purchase them on Amazon. These particular knot protectors are the best that I have found for protecting the knot, and they also happen to be particularly compatible with the worm style of weights. And then after the knot protector, it's time to tie on the snap swivel, which is what you're going to use to connect your rig. And my recommendation is a VMC Duo Lock style of snap swivel that is nearly equivalent to the breaking strength of your main line. I typically tie on my snap swivel with a double uni knot or a fish and full knot, which are two of the strongest knots for braided line. And I think by now I've mentioned 3 or 4 different knots in this video, so in the video description I'll be putting links to my tutorials for all of the knots that I've mentioned. Alright, once you have tied on that snap swivel and attached your rig to it, it's time to find the right depth for your bait and set up your magnetic line clip. Before putting any bait on the rig, the first thing I do is clip on this little depth finder weight right here. You just clip it onto the hook and you drop it down to the bottom. And as you're doing that, make sure to keep that magnetic line clip in your hand as the weight descends. Once my depth finder weight has reached the bottom, I position that magnetic line clip about 2 feet away from the spool or whatever your desired distance from the bottom is, and then add 2 bobber stops to the line, one above and one below the magnetic line clip about 6 inches apart. For my bobber stops, I use some short strands of high visibility 200-pound braid attached to the main line with a uni knot. The bobber stop that you position above the line clip serves to release the line clip when you get a bite, and the one that's positioned below the line clip serves to keep that line clip from sliding all the way down to your rig once it gets released. At any point, if you decide to relocate to a new hole that has a different depth, you can simply slide those bobber stops along the line to adjust for that new depth. And that's it. That is how you set up your IceHawk tip-ups for maximum performance. So in conclusion, do you absolutely need these high-tech IceHawk tip-ups in order to catch fish? Well, the answer is, of course, no. There are tried and true cheaper alternatives out there. The normal tip-ups with the little flags that pop up, they work perfectly fine. But personally, I find that my fishing experience and in many cases my performance are greatly increased when I use nicer gear. So the same way that I prefer my Trika 10X spinning rod, which is a very nice expensive rod, over let's say an ugly stick, for example, I prefer my IceHawk over a traditional classic style tip up with the little flag. It's just the way I am. And just a couple more things before we end the video here. The tip up that I showed you in today's video is the original IceHawk tip up, but they just released their 2nd generation, which is a Bluetooth model of the IceHawk tip up. The new model basically functions the same way, except that it connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and you can use it and control it through an app on your phone. You can set the new model up so that it only alerts you to a bite on your cell phone as opposed to broadcasting it, so it's a lot more stealthy, and you can link up to 10 tip-ups together in the app, and you can name them individually to keep track of which one is getting the bite, and you can rename them as many times as you want. It has a lot of crazy, cool new features, definitely worth checking out. And if you do feel like checking them out, I'm happy to announce you can now use code NXTLVL to save 10% on your order. That's next level without the E's, NXTLVL for 10% off. I'm leaving links to everything that was shown or mentioned in today's video down in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.